Alrighty then, and a very warm welcome to another Shakes and Fidget video. Today we are going to talk about the planned change of the Berserk. And first of all, I'll give you some general facts, then I will talk about arguments, pro and contra for this change, and I will end up with a slow conclusion in my mind. And well, I'm pretty interested in your opinion, so if you have any opinion about the better test Berserker, if you played it, made some experience with that, please share your thoughts in the comments. I would like to see them as well. But first of all, I want to thank to Domme, who posted this screen in my Discord. So he bought another 100 mushrooms with my code Hunrizzle. Really, guys, I appreciate this support. This support is really immense. That's why there's a giveaway today, ending on Friday. But there will be more in the future, as long as you keep using my code. Thank you, guys. First of all, basically, the Berserk was introduced in 2019. So actually, very loud, let me just make it a little bit lower. Yeah, so actually, 10 years there were no Berserkers in Shakes and Fidget, and this class was introduced by Player Games as the most powerful dungeon masterclass. And well, 3.5 years later, you can say that the Berserk really is the dungeon masterclass overall. I mean, 3.5 years people tried out how it is to play the Berserk with shrooms and how to play it effectively. Where is it good and where is it maybe not that good? And overall, you can say that the Berserk is really the best dungeon class over so far as it was introduced, and that's why it gets a nerf. So what has changed? You saw the informations if you started to play the beta, or if you got the message officially via the media, social media, but its ability of Frenzy, which is basically a rage, is not available against mages anymore, and it's kept for one attacking. So if you start an attack and you go to Frenzy or the rage, it just will maximum have 10 attacks, then the opponent will start to beat you up again. And those two changes are planned. It's not sure that Shakes and Fidget will do it like this, but we will see in the future. I think they will change something. If it's going to be changed like it is now, well, time will see. So, and of course, this led to a pretty much converse discussion. So many people argued in Shakes and Fidget Discord, for example, or via YouTube commentaries, and I will give some arguments for that change, first of all, and then against. I'm choosing some opponents to fight against, especially mages, where the stats are most likely possible, most likely able to compete with those stats here. And well, arguments for that change are that the competition seemed to be quite unusual. So some people, especially when I read in Spieledrin came back, and many people wrote in his YouTube videos in the comments that they appreciate the change because they think that it's an unfair competition for the Berserk at all. And look, like the guys pushing up the level that high, 50% of all pushers were Berserks at least, and so they say it's it's fair to them to the Berserker get changed. The second argument is that basically all the abilities of the other characters of the other classes are not working against mage. So why shouldn't the Berserk have his ability against mages as well? That's one point. The third argument most likely is that newer classes, which were invented by player games, had problems in balancing. So basically, they think that the change is made to make the game design in general a little bit easier, so that other classes are more valuable against Berserks or in a general tier list. And some people say that they don't mind the change because they didn't really rush with the Berserk anyway, and they still would go on to play. So they're like, oh, it doesn't mind because I did not feel the special things about the Berserk. And I mean, that's maybe true because the Berserk in general got a big benefit for mushroom users and for power mushroom users especially. Of course, there are people against this change. I mean, a lot of people said, oh, they like the Berserk as it is, so they choose to play the Berserk on the newer server or a little bit older, and they might stop to play if player games decides to really nerf the Berserk like they plan to do. And I mean, that's a point that always can happen if you change something. I think player games will know about that risk. Another argument is that the Berserk is of course strong in the early game, but it loses its favor, especially in the late game. Of course, in the late game, it's more like the Berserk is due to his lower HP, not that good in PvP anymore. So it's always good in PvE, but in PvP it will get weaker over the time, and that's why it's not needed to nerf the Berserker that high. Another argument is that the Berserk was a very favorable class to be a catch-up project. So to go to all the server and catch up with the current player, and a very good example is Server 7 Germany, the Elevator. The Elevator is where I'm included as well, so 50 Berserks are most likely able to catch up as fast as possible to current people to give them a competition. And this is not possible anymore if the Berserk gets changed like it is, and well, leads to very bad opinions about this in general as well. Well, and it's really hard for me to give a fair conclusion because, as I said before, I like to play the Berserk and the server starts because it was pretty easy. Even though if I don't invest that much time, it was easy to get a specific level. So I was no power mushroom user to get the best records, but I like to play like level 75 in 2 or 3 days or whatever, and to give support to guilds, and it was not that expensive in general, so that's why I like the Berserk pretty much in general, yeah. And then I think I thought a lot about that. My first impression was like, no, please don't do this, but when I thought that over, I think it's maybe it's needed. I mean, we were always talking about new classes, and that it seems so quite unusual to get everything fixed and balanced. And if they start to cap like the Berserker, which was overall a pretty good class for PvE, it was top tier, and in PvP it was like tier 2 at least. In the early game, it's always possible as Berserk to fight against other characters and to beat them, but mostly you needed mushrooms for this. So the Berserk was not good in PvP in general, but the Berserk was a good PvP class because you were able to fight everybody on the server, and maybe you have a lucky try, so you were always able, by investing mushrooms, to beat stronger characters in general, and especially of course against mages, because if you started your rage and you kept like 6-7 rage attacks, then the mage wasn't able to kill you. Otherwise, the mage was able to kill you pretty fast with his damage factor. So it was like a 50-50 situation. And maybe with that cap, Although personally I don't like it. Maybe we will be able to stop the overall balance gap, which is not like the balance for all classes should be like this, but because of classes like the Berserk, it's more like this. Yeah, it's more like my head, pretty big. And maybe in general, with capping abilities, I mean, they don't cap the Berserk especially, but they cap the ability. The 50% rage ability against all classes is capped. Especially the most impact has the mage stuff. And I think this can be interesting because I personally, I'm playing as mage on Europe 1. And it's very hard as mage to get more than two wins. Because if the Berserk appears and rages up, you will get killed. Also, you're a stronger mage. So I'm playing against lower level people with lower stats, and still, as mage, I had a hard time. I expected the mage to be more fun, like 10 years ago, than it is now. And I really have struggles on your run to keep my fun up, because it's really frustrating to have such a low impact in general. So I think for the mages, it makes the mage much more valuable. So I like it in terms of mage, but I don't like it in terms of Berserker. And the cap for 10 attacks maximum is a general thing. And I think, yeah, as I played the Berserk, I had like combos of 15 attacks in a row. I think I have a combo with 15 attacks during one rage round. On server Euro 3 especially. And yeah, I used, for some dungeons, I used a lot of mushrooms as well. And but I was able to beat dungeons not due to one good rage combination. So sometimes, I mean, if you start new, you can have 10 attacks, then the opponent attacks, and then you most likely can have another 10 attacks as well. So it's not about how many attacks do you have during one rage. Sometimes it was, but sometimes it was more like how many attacks do you have in total. And that's why the cap of 10 attacks per rage is not that much impactful. So if you start a new server with that Berserk, how it is on the better server, you will experience that you will pretty much be able to get through the scout dungeons. You will have a little harder times against the warrior dungeons. Perhaps you need more strength than before to do so, or more constitution to survive more attacks. Maybe that is more important, yeah. But against mages, you will most likely have the same situation as a scout. I mean, the scout has 25. Scout has 25% armor, but well, mages ignore armor, but they have the same life factor. And another thing why I think the Berserk will not most likely be played anymore is that even now, before the beta, the Berserk in PvP, if is active player, is pretty much strong. So as I said, you can beat much stronger opponents. Yeah, but if you are getting attacked, you most likely lose that favor. And as being attacked as Berserk is not that strong in PvP in general. And now when it's getting nerfed, it will be even weaker in PvP active, but you still can give a lot of tries to beat somebody. But in a passive way, you will most likely lose a lot of more fights. So it will be very hard to have a good placement in a competitive way with a Berserk in comparison to before. We have to consider that Playa Games, of course, goes a risk with that. And I think, especially with the next servers, there won't be that many Berserks as before. Maybe just, I could imagine just 20% or lower. Especially the mushroom users, or the percentage of the mushroom users for Berserks will decrease a lot. It's not going to die, but it will decrease a lot. And I think that the Berserk, as it is in the beta, is not that weak. It's not the weakest class, but the thing is, people knowing that it was much stronger before will not go to say, hey, come on, let's play the Berserk, although it's a lot of weaker. And I'm not sure about how many people with current Berserks pretty much in a high level are still will to play, to go on playing on that server with that char. So I think player games will go a risk to lose those players. It will lead that other classes will be more favored. As I said, the mage has a higher value due to this change, but especially the Diamond Hunter and the Scout will now lead the leaderboards for in the early game and in the mid game, because against mages, those two classes will be the strongest classes. They deal exact the same damage, they have the same life, and they have no abilities against mages. But the Berserk now is weaker. The Berserk now is weaker against Scout and Demon Hunter versus mages because it has the same constitution, but it has lower damage, especially if you follow the instructions. Most people don't know that the Berserk currently has a weapon like wait, let me help you out. Currently the Berserk has a warrior weapon as well, and you think that it would make the damage of a warrior, but Shakes and Fidget tools found out that the Berserk has a higher damage factor, and so you could actually deal the same damage as a Scout currently. In the beta it says the damage factor of this weapon is 100% and not 125%, which would make it the same as before. So maybe the Berserk gets 2 official nerfs and 1 unofficial nerf by reducing his damage, and all those 3 things in total will lead to a lot people not choosing the Berserk anymore, and some current actual played Berserks on pretty much higher level could stop. So actually it's a hard decision. I feel like you have to change something, but what can you change? And as I said in the start, in the arguments, I think it's maybe a way for player games to get the game a little bit more balanced in general. Also, the way to do so, maybe it's the only possible way, because like in the last years they just designed several things, several abilities, and of course they made a lot of money with the Berserk, and it's fully acceptable. And maybe now they saw, okay, we have to cap it in general, like, and I can understand that they will do so. They want to give better value to other classes. Like, I'm not sure about the Bard at the moment. I'm not sure about the Druid at the moment. There were so many changes, and some changes did not appear very much because, for example, the Berserk was still too good against this class. And yeah, I can understand this decision, but I fear well, maybe I'm not fearing, but for me it would make sense if they change the Berserk like it is. Maybe, I mean, there's not much you could actually say. You keep the rage against mages, for example, but then you should lower the chance per attack. But I think that losing its ability against the mage is the most conclusive needed way for player games, whatever the plans are. And I could as well imagine that other classes might lose their strongest ability a little bit. Like the Demon Hunter right now is a little bit stronger in PvE against warriors and scouts than the Berserk with its ability. Also, it has a decrease of Flask of Resurrection already. Resurrection. Yeah. But, for example, the Scout doesn't have this. The Scout has 50% evade chance no matter what, like the Berserk had with its Rage, and maybe they will cap it in the future as well, a little bit. Yeah, they will experience that the Scout will pretty much be the most competitive class on your server, I think, besides the Demon Hunter, and they might cap it. I think so. Yeah. I mean, the Assassin has the same evade chance, but the Assassin is generally more expensive to play with its 2 weapons. Although in PvP, the Assassin is a little bit more constant than the Scout with its 2 attacks per round. And so I think they might even cap the Assassin evade chance. I mean, with server 41, I beat some dungeons by evading 30 40 times in a row. Like, it will not have a big impact, but it will lead to the more general balance over all classes. I could imagine that this will happen in the future as well. And, well, I spoke a lot. I have to cut some things out because it's really hard. There are many thoughts. And, well, as I just can repeat myself at the start, like in the start. My first impression was, no, please don't do it. It will destroy the Berserk. My second impression is, yes, the numbers of active Berserks for current servers and new servers will be much lower. My third impression is, over the time, maybe people will play the Berserk more again by understanding how it works, and I think we might get some other caps for the most strongest classes. And my overall conclusion is, yeah, please do it, because I think it's the only way to stop this much character class gap, no matter if it's PvE or PvP, just in general, the gap between all players. And I mean, free-to-play players, yeah, the Berserk is not that much recommended anymore for you, because even a free-to-play player could have a lot of dungeon tries, dungeon beaten by luck. They will not do so anymore, but they don't mind it that much. Yeah, the mushroom users will start to go to the other classes. Some people might stop, some projects might stop. Yeah, but I think changing something is recommended. If it's the best way, I don't know. I don't think it's the best way, but I have no better option and in my mind. And personally, I don't like the decision. Yeah, but well, it's, yeah, I mean, I always said don't play that game competitive, and you're always dependent on player games and their decision. That is always the case. In the last years, it was more and more seeable that this is happening, or that this is the state. And so if they do decisions, you either can say, okay, I like it and I go on, or I don't like it and I go on, or you say, no, sorry. And that's it. And everybody has to think about it on its own. And yeah, I think all reactions are understandable. I think there's no perfect solution for everybody. And I'm pretty much, yeah. I mean, I would be fine if they would keep the Berserk like it is, yeah. Yeah, so I said a lot of things and it's very hard. My first impression, I just can repeat myself, was please don't do it. My second impression was, if you do it, can you have it like in another way perhaps? And when I thought about being mage, I think like actually it's quite good if they would do it. And my third impression is, yes, I think it's not the perfect solution. There's no perfect solution for everybody. So they started something in the last years. They developed this situation. They came into this situation. They saw that newer classes, which they might think they would be pretty interesting, were not that interesting because it had a lot of disadvantages against classes like the Berserker. And we maybe need a cap, as I said before, to have all a little bit more balanced. But personally, I will not like it, the decision, if they change it. I would be fine if they don't change it, but then we have still the same problems. Yeah, and it will be very sad for Server 7 Germany if the project might stop. It was planned for 2 years. The 1 year is already gone. We were quite successful with reaching place 3 in the latest elevator, but it would be sad, yeah, if that project is stopped over the time or earlier than expected. Yeah, as I said, it's not a perfect solution, but maybe it's the only way to get things started. And maybe all of us have to, especially the mushroom users, have to consider checks and Fidget with new server starts or with record charts or whatever. We have to consider, or we have to look at it on another way. We have to start to look about other goals to play for, because as I mentioned, I think this will not be the only cap in the future for some of those more preferred classes, especially in PvE, or depending on their ability. That's it. Thanks for listening, guys. I appreciate any support. If you have questions, feel free to use them. Feel free to write them down in the comments. And as I said, thanks for every supporter. Code Hunrizzle on the top. Thank you, guys. Over and out.